Hi everyone, welcome to this interview by Core Recruitment. Thanks very much for joining us today. My name is Christian, I'm the founder at Core, and we cover mid to senior level appointments across exec and non-exec positions across lots of different locations and lots of different industry sectors, but all related to hospitality and guest service. We're running this interview series and we're meeting lots of different business leaders from lots of different businesses who are entrepreneurial or growing or scaling or doing interesting things within the sectors that we operate within. And all of these interviews can be seen on our website, which is www.corerecruitment.com. You can listen to them on Spotify or you can watch them on YouTube as well. So there's lots of different mediums for you to see them through. And if there's any business leaders that you've worked with previously or that were in your current organization who you think it'd be good for us to feature, then please do get in touch with us to let us know. Now, within the hotel and accommodation sector, we've seen lots of disruption over the past couple of years, especially when it comes to apart hotels and the serviced apartment side of things. And there's one company in particular called Adina, who are an Australian-based business who have been doing expansion. They've just come into the UK. They've got some new concepts launching, and they're doing really interesting things within the sector. And one of their leaders, Moritz, is going to be joining us today to tell us a little bit about the business, their plans, and a little bit about his leadership journey as well. How are you, Moritz?
I'm fine, thank you, Christian.
Excellent. Thank you
Be
very
with
much
you.
for joining us today. No, you're very welcome. That's a very beautiful background you've got there. So, is that one of your properties?
It is indeed. I picked Geneva today.
Geneva.
It's
Geneva.
our
Do you
Geneva.
rotate them?
Yeah, I rotate them. I rotate them. And since we had the G7 in Evian, and a lot of people stayed in Geneva, and we had a good business there, so I thought Geneva is nice, and they need to get their share of exposure as well.
Excellent. Well, it looks lovely. Just for those who don't know the business, have just landed from Mars, have never seen an apart hotel before. Adina, TFE, tell us just a little bit about the business and your guys' ethos as well.
Yeah. Well, TFE Hotels comes from Australia, sitting in Sydney, and we operate across Australia, New Zealand, and Europe and the UK now, our latest edition. And with the apart hotels, we basically filled the niche market a few years back. Today you have apartment hotels all over the place, but I think Adina or TFE was one of the first back then. And what we do, we cover a elevated apartment concept, and we call it hotel apartment because at the end of the day, it is a hotel and it's a hotel service. We are not exclusively leasing it out on a long-term basis. We do have transient business and offer hotel services, but with the comfort of your home. And each of our units have a kitchenette, they have a dishwashing machine, a washer dryer. If you have a one-bedroom unit, you have an additional sofa bed. So it's good for families. Our room size is larger than a hotel room. So hence that's our niche. And if you go to any of the Adina hotels, you will immediately feel at home entering the lobby. That is in all of our hotels, really nice, cozy, personal place. And in addition, we have in almost all hotels a pool and fitness area.
Excellent. Now, in terms of that service department kind of side of things, I mean, it's been growing really rapidly, kind of like I would say, kind of like in multiple markets. This is kind of like been quite a change, I would say, in kind of like consumer spending kind of like habits. Can you just tell us a little bit about the general trend and what you guys are seeing at the moment?
Well, since I joined the apartment hotel section in our hospitality industry, I, of course, notice even more what's going on, and new investments pretty much look at the apartment sector because they realize also what we're doing is really clever and it's what people demand. The traveler pattern has changed, and where luxury will always be luxury, high-end luxury will always have its place and will never fail. I think in the mid-market, it will be more and more difficult for hotels to gauge interest. And with the hotel market and the leisure travel, especially, that has increased with families, young families, the apartment market is just in demand.
It very much is. Now, for you, because your background was global luxury hotel properties, kind of like,
Well,
with some pretty prestigious kind of businesses, and you brought kind of like, real kind of like wealth experience when you moved into the sector. Was it really different for you? How did you adjust? What were the kind of challenges that you faced from that perspective?
There were definitely differences. The staff strength or the number of people operating our hotels, and that was a change at the beginning. However, I enjoy it now because it shows that you can do it differently. Obviously, that has a price. So you can't run with everything behind the guest and provide service 24 hours. But our strength is our casual service. Our people are extremely customer focused, and it's a complete different type of hospitality. It's not that stiff, high-end luxury, uniformed, manicured fingernails. Everybody is at the service. Beds are made every day. Linen is changed every day. No, we are not that. We are casual service from the heart.
Love that. Now, your career spanned lots of different areas, Europe, Asia, Middle East, like that whole side of things. And there's lots of people who would look at your background and experience and be like, wow, he's done a lot of things in a lot of different places. Like, how did you put yourself forward and how did you manage to kind of like have the experience that you'd kind of had? And is there any tips that you'd give to people or notes to your younger self you would kind of pass back as advice?
Yeah. After my initial apprenticeship as a waiter, as a matter of fact, I I was I was I was sort of asked to go to London for an experience right after. So I went to London, and that's till today my absolute favorite hotel, and I can name it. It's Claridge's.
Oh, beautiful.
Um, just a wonderful place. And the experience in London when I returned back to Germany was like, that was quite nice. I like that international type of approach. It's different, it's challenging. So I looked at my next target was Hong Kong. Unfortunately, that never happened, even though I spent a few weeks there looking for a job. Never happened. But I was fixed in going abroad. And when my company, I worked for Kempinski at the time, offered a move to Moscow, just said, anywhere you sent me, I'm doing it because I want to progress in my career. So what I would, and it continued from that experience onward, that I was longing for exciting destinations. I wanted to learn, I wanted to experience, I wanted to get different jobs. So I would always recommend anybody, if you really want to succeed, be open, don't limit yourself. The world is an oyster, and just go out and experience. And what you gain from such diverse career, you don't struggle anymore with different cultures. You learn how is it in Asia, how is it in the Middle East, and within Asia it's different, and within the Middle East it's different. So yeah, for me that's an absolute blessing that I was able to do that, and I cherish that. And your next question probably will be, what was the nicest destination you have been? And my
Well, I
answer
was
is
actually
always
going to ask,
all have been.
I was going to ask for before that because people normally talk about these cultural working differences, and you've worked everywhere from the Middle East to Germany, it's kind of like across the globe. But can you give us some of the cultural nuances? Can you give us maybe a couple of examples of kind of like how you would get the best out of people within those different cultures and societies? And I guess a little bit about how you had to adapt your style depending on the location that you were in.
Obviously, there are differences, and if I treat a German colleague the way I would deal with an Asian colleague, I wouldn't get anything done. They just need a different approach. And I would say I was in Vietnam. In Vietnam, people are very eager to, and they're very industrial. They never sit down. They always work. But sometimes you need to also give them, I call it stick and carrot, right? That works in some cultures, in others not. In Brunei, you had to be also a bit stricter at times there's face value. Losing face is a big issue. So you need to be very careful how you deal with people. Where in Germany, I'm not angry in general, but I mean, if you raise your voice slightly, maybe you can do it in Germany in a room with 12 people. You should not do that in Asia. You would never target somebody in public. You would always have a one-on-one conversation. So that's the difference. However, all all of the different cultures have one thing in common. They like to be treated kind and like humans. So showing your heart and empathy goes a long way, no matter where you are.
So one of the things which kind of I think is a global I was going to say phenomenon, but phenomenon normally has a good connotation as opposed to a bad connotation. But this kind of like increasing dependency on tech, this increasing kind of like the decrease of kind of like, human interaction and more kind of like technology interaction, also the kind of apparent disengagement of kind of like, the younger generations when it comes to, frontline service communication, that kind of side of things, which ultimately impacts hospitality, right? So when you look at kind of like across the European labor market, and I guess also the global kind of like markets, what are you seeing and what have you seen in terms of positive kind of technology adaptations or kind of like engagement of kind of like the younger workforce?
Well, we have with TFE just rolled out earlier this year our new tech stack. So we shifted our property management system into another one with an overlay. We call it GXP, Guest Experience Program, where basically you don't anymore check in on the computer. You have an iPad, and only the basic functions that are really needed on a day-to-day basis or in interaction with guests are there. We feel that we are a very young team in general. They're very eager. They're very knowledgeable when it comes to technology. They're very easy and fast in picking up new skills. They like it. And it will become more and more a part of our life. And in hospitality, I mean, the airlines always started. They started with yield management or revenue management. Hotels followed. They started with online check-in. Then they started with you even drop your own luggage, and we're doing the same. With our new platform, you will get a notification before you can already check in online when you come. You can even dispense the key yourself if you wish so. You can still go to a team member and collect your key, but at the same time, you can do it all yourself. And if I add to that, we have a new brand called Moment, MMNT, that we have launched about before I joined 2.5 years ago as a test setup with 6 rooms
This is in
only.
Berlin, right?
It's in Berlin, yeah. And basically, there is no personal interaction. Everything is via your smartphone. You book via your smartphone. You open the door via the smartphone. You have a common kitchen. If you like utensils, there are lockers everywhere that you hold your smartphone. You enter a code, door opens. So yeah, technology will more and more be a part of hospitality.
So
And
in a
that's
property like that, just pausing for a second, but in a property like that, how do you manage things like security, theft, those kind of like, issues, kind of like, on property? Because I'm assuming that is it completely unmanned or how does the
no,
format go?
no, we will have always a person on site, but it's not the normal 2, 3 receptionists and a waiter. It's just very, very limited.
Yeah,
And you don't need to interact with this person to get your stay done, whether it's a night or whether it's a week. If you don't want to, you don't need to talk to anybody.
understood. Okay, fine. So there's still is kind of like a big hospitality element which is involved in that as well. Could you tell us a little bit more about the smart room kind of technology that you're using in that case?
We're working together with Hefele, who provide the door locks, etc. And Like Magic is a software company who has also developed our GXP overlay that runs above the property management system.
Excellent. And is that software which has been designed specifically for Adina, or is it something that other companies can access as well?
It was something that did exist, however, in a very limited fashion, and together with our team in Australia, it was further developed to our needs. Yeah.
Excellent. Now, cost pressures are something which have been coming in kind of like a lot in the past kind of couple of years, and I think this kind of like goes across the market. And sustainability seems to have taken a little bit of a back step to the kind of like cost management kind of side of things. Can you tell us kind of like, a little bit about the approach that you guys are taking because I think this is one of your building blocks, right, in terms of sustainability. So it'd be really great to understand kind of like a little bit about the initiatives you're driving in that sense. And also, if there's anything that you've actually found has been positively revenue generating for the business as well, that would be great.
We are happy to say that all our properties in Europe are Green Key certified. That's what we have done. We have not been able to measure yet whether this leads to more bookings. However, it definitely needs to be more successful in RFPs, because any company today where you're invited for an RFP, they have certain requirements that have a lot of ESG elements included. So that's a part. We have introduced a software for it's called Clear, in order to consolidate our energy consumptions, etc., in order to establish our carbon footprint, being able to satisfy legal requirements with reporting, etc. We engage ourselves in charity initiatives, so we're doing what I think everybody today is doing, in all honesty. I would be lying to say, oh, we are the leader in that field. That wouldn't be fair. I would get a bashing for that, but I think we are on the right path and we're doing a lot already. And we're creating this consciousness amongst the teams as well. We have in each hotel a leader who drives the initiatives and focuses on ESG.
Excellent. Sounds really good. So in terms of like, for those who don't know kind of like that bit more about kind of like Adina, just to get an idea of kind of like the size, scale, how many properties you kind of, or employee base kind of globally, what does it look like?
How many hotels we have in total? Sorry, I got distracted.
That's right.
We have at the moment 60, 80, 120 about.
Wow. And these are management contracts, or these are all kind of like company owned kind of businesses?
Well, let me talk about Europe and UK, EU and UK. We have predominantly lease agreements. In the UK, we started now with management contracts. However, we also invested in the property, so we're a co-investor. And in Germany, we have our first 5 hotels. They are owned by us, and then we manage them. So it's a management agreement, but we also own properties.
Excellent. You're a good customer.
In Australia, it's a mixed bag. There is some leased, a lot managed.
Excellent. Now there has been this kind of like I wouldn't say it's a new trend, but the business leisure kind of side of things, kind of like from a customer perspective, be leisure kind of like space. Could you just tell us like, you know, a little bit about kind of like how you're adapting to kind of like both markets at the moment and what mix you're seeing kind of across the estate?
I cannot say that we have identified a huge amount of pleasure business coming through our doors. Maybe that's because where we are located, that we are not really a resort location, but we are absolutely tailored for this type of business because we're providing a home away from home. You have an apartment, you know, you have all the amenities that you would have at home. So for pleasure, we would be ideal suited. But I can confirm that we see really, it's not a measure that we at the moment employ.
Okay, understood. And then in terms of the expansion that you guys do have coming up, you've obviously opened in Germany, you've come into the UK. What can we expect kind of like next in terms of new openings and what your strategy is?
Officially signed, and I can talk about is one moment, the first actual moment, full service moment, full moment hotel in Berlin, in Ostkreuz. And we open next year in September our first A by Adina in Germany. We have last year opened in Vienna. That's our premium product.
Mm-hmm.
And we're opening it in Berlin. The first property that we will be having in West Berlin, Old West Berlin, on Kudamm. Beautiful 160 room property. In addition, there will be a dedicated restaurant that is catered for the Berlin neighborhood rather than an exclusive hotel guest restaurant. Because doing restaurants is not something that we normally drive. We have in our Munich property a very successful restaurant. In all the other properties, we rather go for a B&F concept rather than F&B.
That's really good. In terms of in terms of your own career, Moritz, and in terms of kind of like, people who are watching this who might kind of think like, oh, I'd really like to do that kind of one day. If you could go back and give yourself kind of like one piece of advice or kind of like stop yourself running into one wall or one failure is an awful word, but you know what I mean, or one kind of like job that you hadn't taken, what would you change in your career path?
I would change nothing in my career. I would do exactly the same again, I guess. But I did have a moment that changed, or yeah, it changed my way of thinking. And I came back from Vietnam and back to Germany, and my wife then got pregnant, so we spent a year in Germany. And the the ex-CEO was running a hotel in Germany and asked me if I can join him as executive housekeeper.
Okay.
And I was already executive assistant manager in Vietnam, and I thought, stepping down to a housekeeper position and then housekeeper anyway. I mean, that wasn't common in Germany. So I asked a few people, and at the end of the day, I took the job, and I was the first male housekeeper with Kempinski.
Oh
I
wow.
reckon nobody can take it away from me. And it was interesting. I learned a lot. And when I then moved on to my next job, I would not have survived 6 months without the experience in housekeeping. So at the end of the day, it turned out to be the absolute right choice. So whatever you do, do it. And sometimes you only know why you did it in the next position.
And how did you find being a leader, well, being working within kind of like an all-female kind of environment? We normally have this in diversity and inclusion going the other way, right? So how did you find the reverse?
I didn't mind. It was just I got picked upon by my male colleagues, of course. Are you shaving your legs now, or what are you doing? But in today's world, it all has changed. So
Yeah, it
that's
definitely
back,
has.
what, 20 years ago, 25 years ago,
Yeah,
almost 30.
absolutely. And as we are a recruitment agency, Moritz, in terms of kind of like, when you are meeting people, I think everybody likes to have a killer kind of like interview question. What question do you like to ask about when you're kind of when you're interviewing potential people to come and work with Adina?
Why should we hire you?
And what response do you like to hear?
Something bold, something cheerful and honest.
Good philosophy. Very, very, very good philosophy. And in terms of the culture within Adina, because you've been there for a good period and like, it's a great business, but if you could sum it up in kind of a couple of words, what would you say kind of like it's working there on a day-to-day basis?
It's a, I mean, I wouldn't be there if I wouldn't like it. I would have left. I enjoy this sort of, let's call it startup spirit. We are already established, but we are not set in stone. We don't have rock solid standards in every single area. We do have standards, of course, but we still have flexibility to apply our own creativity, our own style of service. And I enjoyed it a lot that we now, as we grow further, are in a position that it's now time to consolidate, but take the best practices of each of the properties and then form a standard that helps us to do a transition and growth with a common standard.
Excellent. Maurice, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you so much for sharing a little bit about your journey, your insights to kind of date so far. I look forward to hearing more in the future. And congratulations again on the launch into the UK and the rest of it. I think you're being very understated about how the growth and expansion has gone within the kind of like properties so far, but it's fantastic to see a business doing so well.
Thank you very much, Christian.